A week before Hurricane Helene hit, my daughter drove me to Ontario. I got on a plane and flew to Charlotte, North Carolina. I go back there every fall for a writing retreat, and this year we went to a new place. I got in at around 5 o'clock. I was supposed to get in much earlier, but the flight got changed a couple weeks beforehand. But I got in, and the freeways were a little congested, rush hour kind of stuff, and that wasn't too bad. But I knew I wouldn't get there in time for dinner because it was, a couple 2.5 hours from the airport, and dinner was at 6, so this was not going to happen. So I went down the road a long ways. And I was zipping along doing well, but I knew I was going to be hungry, so I stopped and got dinner. I was trying to choose a place where I could see that there looked like there was an on-ramp again. Once in a while, there's not both off and on, so I wanted to make sure I got one. And I did. And when I got up to the top, I double-checked, and absolutely, I could get right back on there. This was perfect, right? And so I turned to the first drive-through I could find, which was Arby's right off the freeway, and went through Arby's. I came out, and GPS sent me right instead of left to get back onto the freeway. And I turned right, assuming that there was just some sort of, how sometimes you can't turn left in a certain place. And so I followed it, and it took me up the road, and at the next light, it didn't tell me to turn around. And so I kept going through. I could see that there wasn't a no U-turn sign, but I figured, they must be taking me up to the next exit. And sure enough, it had me turn left, and I went through like a residential, and I thought, this is really strange. And the next thing I know, I'm on back roads, narrow 2-lane back roads that, guys, after a while, I bypassed Asheville. I should have driven through Asheville. I bypassed it. And I was on these tiny little roads. And after a while, I knew that the GPS had just taken me somewhere. I had no idea where. And it was, so it's dark, which is fine. I love driving at night. And, the sky was really that beautiful blue that a great night sky gets. I was loving it. There were stars, but then fog kind of whisked through, and it was the neatest fog because it was that kind of fog that you kind of drive into and you're like, uh-oh, and then it clears again. And it was just these pockets of wispiness. It was beautiful, and I was loving it, but I could not figure out why GPS had done this. And so, I'm going around these curves. I'm seeing the canopy of trees and the hills, and it was lovely. And most of the trip, I saw very little but occasional roads off to other places. But for the most part, all I saw was nature, the moon once in a while, those little wisps once in a while, and it got me to the road where I needed to go, and it told me to go like 4 miles past the sign. We were going to Fairhaven Ministries in Roan Mountain, but it told me to go like 4 miles past the entrance sign, and I was like, I know that we can walk from our little chalets down the hill to that lodge. I know it's in walking distance. And 4 miles, a lot of people aren't going to consider to be walking distance. So I figured GPS had messed up. And it didn't occur to me that I might have messed it up, right? And I don't actually think I did. I eventually got there. I got into my chalet with my friend. I sat down on the bed, and we went to a different place this year, like I always said. And my old place, I'll leave a link where you can see, the old place that we went to. And I always called it my happy place because you just go in and I sit down, and it feels so like I've come home every time I sit in that one room. And it was funny. I climbed up on that bed. I was exhausted, but I climbed up on that bed. I sat with my back against the bed. I pulled my laptop up. I looked at that picture that I showed early, and I was like, this is beautiful. And I'm home and I'm happy and I'm in this wonderful, wonderful place. While I was driving, it kind of hit me. It's like the Bible is kind of like a GPS. You study it, you follow its directions, and sometimes you end up going in places that you don't understand. What is going on? This doesn't seem to make sense. There's a much better direct route. Why is this happening? And then you get there and you realize you just had a beautiful journey. And did you spend the entire journey arguing with God about how He directed you through His word? Or did you enjoy the journey? Did you trust the Lord? Did you trust His word? And did you have that experience that He gave you as a gift? The following Tuesday, 2 days before Helene hit the Appalachian region, I was in eastern Tennessee at Roan Mountain there. But I was actually in Johnson City when I left. It was starting to rain when I stepped out of my friend's house. I was loving it. I love rain so much. We don't get very much of it, so I just love it. And I was driving and I'm following the GPS again. And all of a sudden I realized this thing is taking me back on those back roads. Why is it doing this? It made no sense. I did not understand why it was doing this. And I was going along, all was, kind of odd. And then the rains got really hard and really heavy, and I had to slow way down. I was going about 30 miles an hour, sometimes less. My windshield wipers are just going like crazy. I'm driving down the very center of the road over the line because there's so much water on the road. It's not safe. And yet I can't turn around. And that was the first time I learned a little bit of compassion for when people cross rushing water. I now kind of understand it because you get going and all of a sudden everything changes. You can't turn around. Now, I'm not saying that people don't make stupid decisions. We all do, but it's not always what it appears. And so I did learn a beautiful lesson there. But then I had to stop and get gas. And when I stopped to get gas, I looked at my boarding pass to make sure that, I hadn't slowed down way too much. And it said that my boarding pass, I was supposed to start boarding at 5. Guys, it was like, I don't know, 4 o'clock, 3:30, somewhere in there. I think it was 3:30. And I had at least 2 hours to go. There was no way I was going to make it. And I couldn't understand why, because I had left with plenty of time. So I was really discouraged and I was mad at GPS. And all I could think about the whole way there was, my analogy that I had used for my word of encouragement was just lousy. You can't trust GPS, which, let's face it, you do need to understand the gist of where you're going to trust GPS usually. It's not a perfect analogy, but I had just decided that I didn't know what I was talking about. I got there. I dropped off my car. I went up to the desk at the airline and I said, look, I've missed my flight. What do I need to do? And she said, well, what's your flight to? And I told her I was going to Denver and then from Denver home, And she's like, well, that flight doesn't leave for another 45 minutes or hour or whatever it is. It doesn't start boarding for 15 minutes is what she said. And I was like, I don't understand. It said that it boards at 5. And she said, did you use the app for your passes? And I'm like, yeah. And I handed her my phone and she looked at it and she just started swiping. This airline, so the flight going to North Carolina a week before, it keeps those boarding passes. So when you reopen the app, the first pass you see is one that has, the flights are over. They're done. They're gone. But you still have to swipe through them to get to the current one. And I hadn't noticed that. And I'm sitting on the plane, so I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about it and I realized, the GPS did it. It took me the right way. I got to where I needed to go. I got to see beautiful things that I don't get to see where I live, because where I live, it's all brown and gray. And there it was just all green. I got my, chlorophyll infusion for the next few months. And I was just like, oh, wow. Okay. So yeah, you can trust the process of, the Lord guiding you, even when it doesn't make. And so, the GPS worked. Well, there were a few other things that I thought about that I had to share. And one of them was, if that GPS hadn't taken me back through those routes, I mean, it took me right past where we had stayed. We went right past the road to Fairhaven Ministries again. Those, I saw them like all again, so I knew that I was right about where I was. But I got to see all that. And guys, I don't know when the next time I'm going to be able to drive those roads are. Those roads, those communities that I drove through, some of them are gone. There are people who are stranded in that area. There are people who have died in that area, and all in a place where I go every year. It seems so wasteful, but I fly to North Carolina / East Tennessee, and I spend a few days just writing. And, I sit in a place, and we don't really talk for most of the day because most of the day we're working. But I write, and I got to, you saw the little Christmas tree and the holly and everything. Well, those are things that are in my book now because I went there and I had this time there to write and reflect and to spend time with the Lord and to get a little lesson on how the Bible can direct me even when it doesn't seem to be making sense. It doesn't matter because the Lord directs us even when where he's sending us doesn't make sense. And I needed that right now, especially with everything going on in our lives. So before I go here, I'll just say those who pray, I would love prayers. We found massive gas leaks in our house yesterday. We've had to shut off our gas, and hopefully they will come tomorrow and tell us what we're going to do. But this is going to be A, massively expensive, but at least B, nobody died because it was severe enough that it's amazing that something hasn't blown up. So I will take all the prayers that I can get. It's why there's not an regular video here. I plan to put this up as an extra, but now instead you get this. And I just have to trust that my Bible there will, guide me in the right decisions as to how to handle all the stuff that's coming down. Because, we don't have hot water and we can't cook outside of, microwave. Yippee doodle. So things are going to be interesting for a little while until we know what they're going to do. And we just have to pray that they don't decide that we have to move out. That would not be good. But so I'll take all the prayers I can get. And I hope you do enjoy the beautiful sights of Fairhaven Ministries in Roan Mountain. And I pray if you ever get a chance to, go there yourself or send someone in ministry who needs a rest, that's a great place to go. They were wonderful people. And hopefully I'll be back on Thursday not looking too raggedy.